Welcome, dear traveler. Let yourself settle into this moment, into this space where you can finally rest. Take a deep breath in, and as you exhale, allow your body to sink a little deeper into comfort. Tonight, I'm going to tell you a story of love blooming in one of the world's most beautiful cities. Let the words wash over you like a gentle wave, and if you drift away before the story ends, that's exactly as it should be. Our story begins on a warm spring morning in Rome, that eternal city where ancient stones hold centuries of whispers, where every cobblestone street curves toward another breathtaking vista, where the air itself seems to shimmer with history and possibility. The sky is a watercolor of soft blues and gentle whites, with clouds that drift lazily across the Roman horizon like ships on a calm sea. Imagine yourself there now, in this magnificent city. The morning sun is golden and kind, not yet holding the fierce heat of midday. It filters through the leaves of umbrella pines, casting dappled shadows on terracotta buildings that have stood for hundreds of years. The air carries the scent of fresh espresso wafting from cafes, mingling with the perfume of jasmine climbing ancient walls, and the earthy aroma of the Tiber River flowing through the heart of the city. This is where two souls, unaware of each other's existence just days before, are about to meet. Let me tell you about them. The first is Sofia, a woman of 28, who has come to Rome from her busy life in London. She's an architect with a deep love for the Renaissance, and she's always dreamed of spending time in this city, sketching its buildings, understanding how its spaces breathe and flow. She's given herself 2 weeks here, staying in a small apartment in the Monte neighborhood, near the Roman Forum, where she can wake to the sound of bells from ancient churches. Sofia is warm-hearted and curious, with dark hair that falls in waves past her shoulders, and eyes the color of chestnuts. She has a gentle laugh and a way of truly listening when people speak, as if she's trying to understand not just their words but the architecture of their thoughts. She's been feeling a bit lost lately, successful in her career but wondering if something essential is missing from her life, some connection she hasn't yet found. And then there's Marco, 30 years old, who has lived in Rome his entire life. He's a photographer and writer, documenting the changing face of his beloved city, the way modern life intersects with ancient grandeur. He knows every hidden courtyard, every quiet piazza where locals gather in the evening, every restaurant where the pasta is made by hand each morning. Marco has warm olive skin, dark curls that refuse to be tamed, and eyes that seem to hold flecks of gold when the sunlight catches them just right. Marco has had relationships before, but nothing that made his heart truly sing. He's begun to wonder if he's too particular, too much of a dreamer, waiting for some mythical perfect connection that only exists in the films and novels he loves. But something in him hasn't given up hope, not entirely. There's a part of him that still believes in the kind of love that changes everything, the kind that makes the world seem brighter and more alive. Neither Sofia nor Marco knows it yet, but their paths are about to cross in a way that will transform both of their lives. The universe, in its mysterious way, has been arranging this meeting, aligning circumstances like a composer arranging notes into a symphony. And Rome itself, ancient and wise, seems to approve, ready to offer itself as the backdrop for this love story about to unfold. As you listen to their story, let yourself relax even more deeply. Your breathing is slow and steady, in and out, like gentle waves on a shore. Your body is heavy and comfortable, supported completely. There's nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to do. just drift along with Sofia and Marco as they begin their journey toward each other. The morning is beautiful, full of promise. The city is waking up slowly, as it has done for thousands of years. Shop owners are rolling up their shutters, the sound echoing down narrow streets. The scent of fresh bread drifts from bakeries. Vespa scooters buzz past, weaving through traffic with practiced ease. Church bells ring out the hour, their deep tones reverberating across rooftops. This is Rome, eternal and ever-changing, ancient and alive, the perfect place for love to bloom. Section 2. The First Encounter. Sofia wakes in her small apartment as the morning light streams through the window, painting golden rectangles on the worn wooden floor. She stretches, feeling rested, excited for another day of exploration. She's been in Rome for 3 days now, and each day has been like unwrapping a gift, discovering new layers of beauty and history. Today, she's planned to spend the morning in the area around Piazza Navona, one of Rome's most celebrated squares, with its magnificent Baroque fountains and the Church of Sant'Agnes. She dresses simply in a light cotton dress the color of olive leaves, comfortable sandals for walking, and pulls her hair back loosely. She tucks her sketchbook and a few pencils into her leather bag, along with a guidebook she's barely opened, preferring instead to wander and discover things organically. There's something magical about getting a little bit lost in Rome, about turning a corner and suddenly finding yourself face to face with a 2,000-year-old temple or a Renaissance palace. After a quick breakfast of coffee and cornetto from a bar near her apartment, Sofia makes her way toward Piazza Navona. The walk takes her through winding streets, past shops selling everything from handmade paper to vintage clothing, past grand palazzos with inner courtyards she can glimpse through iron gates, past tiny churches tucked into corners, their doors open to reveal interiors glittering with gold and marble. She arrives at Piazza Navona mid-morning, when the square is already humming with life. Artists have set up their easels, creating quick portraits and caricatures for tourists. The central fountain, Bernini's magnificent Fountain of the Four Rivers, dominates the space, water cascading over carved figures representing the Nile, the Ganges, the Danube, and the Rio de la Plata. Sofia stands for a moment, just taking it all in, the way the morning light catches the water, the colors of the buildings surrounding the square in shades of ochre, burnt sienna, and cream. She decides to sit at one of the cafes lining the piazza, a small place with tables outside, their umbrellas offering shade. She chooses a table with a good view of the fountain and settles in, ordering an espresso and a glass of water. The waiter, an older gentleman with kind eyes, brings her order with a smile, setting down the tiny cup of rich, dark coffee and the sparkling water with a practiced elegance. Sofia sips her espresso slowly, savoring the bold, slightly bitter flavor. She opens her sketchbook and begins to draw, her pencil moving across the page as she captures the lines of the fountain, the way the sculptures seem to emerge from the rock, the gesture of one figure's raised arm. She loses herself in the act of drawing, the way she always does, the world narrowing down to just the line of her pencil and the shapes before her. Meanwhile, Marco is also at Piazza Navona this morning. He's been commissioned to photograph the square for an article about Rome's eternal appeal to artists and writers. He's been here countless times, of course, but he's trying to see it with fresh eyes, to capture some essential quality that will speak to readers who have never stood in this place. He walks around the perimeter, his camera hanging from his neck, observing the play of light and shadow, waiting for the right moment. As he circles the piazza, His attention is caught by a woman sitting alone at a cafe, drawing intently. There's something about the way she's completely absorbed in what she's doing, oblivious to the bustle around her, that makes Marco pause. The morning light falls across her face, illuminating her concentration, and Marco, almost without thinking, raises his camera and captures the image. It's not for the article, just for himself, because something about the scene feels worth preserving. But then he feels a pang of conscience. He doesn't usually photograph people without their permission, especially not in such an intimate, unguarded moment. He debates with himself for a few seconds, then decides to approach her, to apologize and to offer to delete the photo if she wants. He walks over to her table, and as he gets closer, he can see what she's drawing, a beautiful, sensitive sketch of the fountain. His respect for her grows. This isn't a casual tourist doodle. This is the work of someone who understands line and form, someone with real skill. "Mi scusi," he says softly, not wanting to startle her. "I'm very sorry to interrupt." Sofia looks up, blinking as if coming back from a far distance. She sees a man standing beside her table, tall and lean, with kind eyes and an apologetic smile. He's holding a professional camera, and she immediately understands what this is about. "I took a photograph of you while you were drawing," Marco continues, switching to English as he detects her accent and her surprised expression. "I should have asked first. I apologize. I can delete it if you'd like." Sofia is surprised, but not upset. There's something genuine in his apology, and she finds herself smiling. "That's all right," she says. "I don't mind. Were you photographing the piazza?" "Yes, for an article," Marco explains, feeling relieved. "But your photograph wasn't for that. You just looked so absorbed in what you were doing. It was a beautiful moment." He pauses, then adds, "Your drawing is excellent. May I?" Sofia turns her sketchbook slightly so he can see better. "Thank you. I'm an architect, so drawing is part of how I think, how I understand spaces." "An architect," Marco says, genuine interest lighting his face. "And you chose Rome. That makes perfect sense. This city is an architect's dream, or maybe nightmare, with everything built on top of everything else, 2,000 years of construction and reconstruction." Sofia laughs, a warm, genuine sound. "Exactly. It's like a three-dimensional history book. Every era has left its mark. Would you mind if I sit for a moment?" Marco asks, gesturing to the empty chair at her table. "I promise I'm not usually in the habit of interrupting strangers, but I don't often meet people who see Rome the way I do." "Please," Sofia says, closing her sketchbook and setting it aside. "I'd enjoy the company. And I should introduce myself. I'm Sofia." "Marco," he replies, sitting down and extending his hand. When their hands touch, both of them feel a small jolt of recognition, as if they're not quite strangers after all, though they've never met. It's a curious sensation, comforting and exciting at the same time. The waiter comes by, and Marco orders an espresso as well. They begin to talk, easily and naturally, as if they're old friends catching up rather than strangers who met 5 minutes ago. Marco tells her about his work, about trying to capture the soul of Rome in photographs and words, about the challenge of documenting a city that's been photographed millions of times and finding something new to say. Sofia tells him about her architectural practice in London, about her love for buildings that have history and character, her frustration with the sterile glass boxes that keep going up in every city. She tells him about her dream of designing buildings that honor context and history while still being modern and functional. They discover they both love the same obscure Italian film directors, that they both prefer wandering without maps, that they both believe cities have personalities as distinct as people. The conversation flows from topic to topic, architecture to cinema to literature to food, and before either of them realizes it, an hour has passed. "I can't believe I'm taking up so much of your time," Sofia says, glancing at her watch. "You have work to do." "The work can wait," Marco says, and he realizes he means it completely. "Unless you have somewhere you need to be?" "No plans at all," Sofia admits. "Just wandering, really?" "Then," Marco says, a slight nervousness entering his voice because he suddenly cares very much about her answer, "would you like to wander together? I could show you some places the guidebooks don't mention. Places locals love." Sofia feels her heart lift with unexpected joy. "I would love that," she says, and she means it with every fiber of her being. And so it begins, so simply, so naturally, in a sun-drenched piazza in Rome, over espresso and a shared love of beauty and history. Neither of them knows it yet, but this chance meeting, this decision to spend the day together, is the beginning of something that will change both of their lives forever. Section 3. Exploring Rome Together Day 1. Marco and Sofia leave Piazza Navona together, walking side by side, their steps naturally falling into sync. Marco leads her through narrow streets she hasn't yet discovered, places where the walls lean in close and the sky is a ribbon of blue overhead. He shows her a tiny courtyard hidden behind an unmarked door, where orange trees grow in terracotta pots and a fountain that might be Roman or might be Renaissance, nobody's quite sure, trickles peacefully. "This is what I love about Rome," Marco says softly, as they stand in the quiet courtyard. "These secret spaces that have been here for centuries, that most people never find. The city rewards curiosity." Sofia looks around, enchanted. The sound of the city is muted here, just the gentle splash of water and the rustle of leaves. Sunlight filters through the orange trees, creating patterns of light and shadow on the ancient stones. "It's like stepping into another time," she murmurs. They continue walking, and Marco proves to be an excellent guide, not in the formal sense of reciting dates and facts, but in the way he brings the city alive with stories. He tells her about the layers of history beneath their feet, how there are entire ancient streets and buildings buried below street level, how Rome is built on Rome, which is built on Rome. He points out details she might have missed, a carved face hidden in a doorway, a fragment of ancient column built into a medieval wall, a shrine to the Madonna tucked into a street corner. "You really love this city," Sofia observes, watching the animation in his face as he talks. "I do," Marco admits. "But I also sometimes fear I take it for granted because I've always lived here. Seeing it through your eyes today, it feels new again. That's a gift you've given me." Their way to Trastevere, the neighborhood across the river, with its narrow cobblestone streets and buildings in shades of gold and rust. Laundry hangs from windows, fluttering like flags. The smell of cooking garlic and tomatoes drifts from open windows. Old women sit on folding chairs outside their doorways, watching the world go by as they've done for decades. "This neighborhood still feels like a village," Marco explains. "Romans from Trastevere will tell you they're not really Romans at all, they're Trasteverini, as if it's a separate place entirely." There's a real community here. They stop at a small church, Santa Maria in Trastevere, one of the oldest in Rome. The interior is cool and dim after the bright sunlight, and the apse mosaic glows like captured light, gold and blue and green, the Virgin and Christ surrounded by saints and sheep. Sofia and Marco sit in a pew, not speaking, just absorbing the beauty and the peace. The church is quiet except for the soft footsteps of other visitors and the whisper of prayers. After a while, they emerge back into the sunlight, blinking. Ready for the Trevi fountain? Marco asks. I know it's crowded and touristy, but it's also genuinely magnificent. Worth fighting the crowds for. I haven't been yet, Sofia admits. I was saving it. They make their way across the city, through more winding streets, past shops and gelaterias and bookstores with volumes stacked to the ceiling. When they turn the final corner, and the Trevi fountain comes into view, even though Sofia has seen countless pictures, she gasps. It's overwhelming in the best way, the massive Baroque confection of marble and water, Neptune's chariot pulled by horses and tritons, water cascading down in sheets and sprays. The area in front of the fountain is crowded with tourists, all trying to get the perfect photo, throwing coins over their shoulders into the water to ensure their return to Rome. But Marco knows the trick. He leads Sofia to the right side, where there's a small elevated area, and from there they have a better view, slightly above the crowd. This fountain, Marco says, was built in the 1700s, but the water it's fed by comes from an ancient Roman aqueduct, the Aqua Virgo, from 19 BC. So when you drink from those fountains around the city, you're drinking water that's been flowing along the same route for over 2,000 years. I find that amazing, this continuity. It's like the city is still alive in the same way it was then, Sofia says. Still functioning, still vital. They stay there for a long time, just watching. The light changes as afternoon moves toward evening, and the marble seems to glow in the golden hour, warm and alive. The sound of the water is constant and soothing, a rushing white noise that somehow makes the crowded space feel more intimate. Are you hungry? Marco asks eventually. I know a place for dinner, if you'd like. Nothing fancy, just real Roman food. That sounds perfect, Sofia agrees. Marco takes her to a trattoria tucked down a side street, the kind of place that doesn't look like much from the outside, just a modest doorway and a small handwritten menu board. But inside, it's warm and welcoming, with red check tablecloths and walls covered in old photos and paintings. The owner, a stout woman with flour on her apron, greets Marco with evident affection, kissing him on both cheeks and patting his face like he's still a child. My friend Angela, Marco introduces her. She's been feeding me since I was 10 years old. Angela looks at Sofia with frank interest and approval, then says something rapid in Italian to Marco that makes him blush. She laughs and shows them to a table in the corner, near a window that looks out onto the quiet street. What did she say? Sofia asks, amused by Marco's reaction. She said it's about time I brought someone nice to dinner, Marco admits. She's been after me to settle down for years. They order together, Marco explaining the dishes and helping Sofia navigate the menu. They start with supply, fried rice balls with mozzarella that stretches when you bite into them. Then cacio e pepe for Sofia, that deceptively simple Roman pasta with just cheese and black pepper, and carbonara for Marco, rich with egg and guanciale. They share a carafe of house wine, light and slightly fizzy, perfect for the warm evening. As they eat, they talk more, delving deeper. Sofia tells Marco about her childhood, about growing up in a small English town and dreaming of cities, of grand buildings and artistic movements. She tells him about losing her mother when she was young, and how her father raised her with such gentleness and encouragement, always supporting her dreams even when they took her far from home. Marco shares his own stories, about growing up in Rome with a large, loud, loving family, Sunday dinners with a dozen relatives, everyone talking over each other. He tells her about his grandmother, who told him stories of Rome during the war, who taught him to see the history not as something dusty and remote, but as something living and connected to now. He talks about the responsibility he feels to document his city, to capture it before it changes too much, becomes too sanitized, too much like everywhere else. There's a sadness in loving old things, Sofia says thoughtfully. Because change is inevitable. Buildings crumble. Neighborhoods transform. Nothing stays the same. True, Marco agrees. But I think there's beauty in that too. Rome has changed constantly for 3,000 years and it's still Rome. It adapts, survives, continues. Maybe that's the real lesson of this place. Not that things last forever, but that they transform while keeping something essential intact. Sofia looks at him across the table, at his thoughtful expression, the way the candlelight catches the angles of his face, and she feels something shift in her chest. It's more than attraction, though she finds him very attractive. It's recognition. A sense that she's known him much longer than just one day. That this connection is real and rare and worth paying attention to. Marco meets her eyes and feels the same thing, a tightening in his chest that's part fear, part exhilaration. He's felt attraction before, certainly, but this is different. This feels like it matters, like it could change things. They finish dinner slowly, either wanting the evening to end. Angela brings them complimentary limoncello, the bright yellow liqueur sharp and sweet. They sip it, and Sofia feels the warmth spreading through her, a glow that's as much from the conversation and the company as from the alcohol. When they finally leave the restaurant, it's fully dark, and Rome has transformed into its nighttime self. The streets are quieter now, the shops mostly closed. Street lamps cast pools of warm light on the cobblestones. Cats slink through shadows, the famous Roman cats that live in the ruins and the alleys, fed by little old ladies who leave out bowls of food. Marco walks Sofia back toward her apartment, the two of them moving slowly, stretching out the time. They talk more, but also fall into comfortable silences, just walking together through the ancient streets. When they reach the street where Sofia is staying, they both stop, either quite ready to say goodbye. "Thank you for today," Sofia says. "It was unexpected and wonderful. The best day I've had in a long time." "For me too," Marco says. "I know this might sound strange, but I feel like I've been waiting to meet you. Like the city brought you here for a reason." Sofia smiles, moved by his words. "I don't think that sounds strange at all. I feel it too." They stand there for a moment, the air between them charged with possibility. Marco wants to kiss her but holds back, not wanting to rush, wanting to do this right. Instead, he takes her hand and raises it to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently, a gesture that feels both old-fashioned and perfect. "Can I see you tomorrow?" he asks. "Yes," Sofia says immediately. "Please." They make plans to meet in the morning, at the market in Campo de' Fiori, and then reluctantly part. Sofia climbs the stairs to her apartment feeling like she's floating, her heart full of this unexpected joy. Marco walks home through the quiet streets, already counting the hours until he sees her again. Both of them sleep deeply that night, dreaming of fountain water and ancient stones, of eyes meeting across a table, of hands almost but not quite touching, of Rome wrapping around them like an embrace, blessing this new thing growing between them. Section 4. Growing closer the second day. The morning sun rises over Rome, painting the terracotta rooftops in shades of gold and amber. Sofia wakes early, feeling a thrill of anticipation that she hasn't felt in years. She takes extra care getting ready, choosing a dress in soft blue linen, brushing her hair until it shines, touching her lips with a hint of color. She feels almost like a teenager getting ready for a first date, nervous and excited and impossibly hopeful. Marco, too, wakes with a sense of purpose and joy. He showers and dresses, pulling on linen pants and a white cotton shirt, running his fingers through his damp curls. He grabs his camera, as always, but today he's not thinking about work. He's thinking only about Sofia, about her laugh, about the way she really listens when he talks, about the intelligence and warmth in her eyes. They meet at Campo de' Fiori just as the market is coming to life. This square, named for the flowers that once grew here, hosts one of Rome's most vibrant markets every morning. Vendors are setting up their stalls, creating colorful displays of fruits and vegetables, fresh flowers, spices, cheese, bread, and fish. The air is filled with the calls of vendors advertising their wares, the bustle of locals doing their daily shopping, the scent of fresh basil and ripe tomatoes. Sofia arrives first, standing at the edge of the market, taking in the sensory feast. She sees Marco approaching from across the square, and her heart lifts. He's smiling, and when he reaches her, he kisses her on both cheeks in the Italian manner, but lingers just a moment longer than strictly necessary, and she finds herself blushing. "Buongiorno," he says warmly. "Did you sleep well?" "Very well," Sofia admits. "Though I woke up early, excited for today." "Me too," Marco confesses, pleased that she's admitting to the same feelings he's had. "Come, let me show you the market. We can get things for a picnic, if you'd like. I thought we could go to Villa Borghese, the park, and spend the day there." "That sounds lovely," Sofia agrees. They wander through the market together, stopping at various stalls. Marco is clearly a known customer here, greeted warmly by many of the vendors. He selects tomatoes with the care of a jeweler choosing diamonds, examining color and firmness, sniffing them to judge ripeness. He buys fresh mozzarella di bufala, glistening and soft, packed carefully in its milky liquid. A loaf of bread, crusty and still warm. Prosciutto, sliced paper thin. Fresh figs, their skins deep purple and yielding to gentle pressure. Peaches that smell like summer itself. At the flower stall, Marco suddenly turns and buys a single perfect rose, pale pink, and presents it to Sofia with a small bow and a grin that's half playful, half serious. "For you," he says. "Because Rome demands romantic gestures." Sofia takes the rose, touched beyond words by the gesture. She lifts it to her nose, breathing in the sweet scent. "Thank you," she says softly. "It's beautiful." They stop at a small bar at the edge of the square for cappuccinos and cornetti, standing at the bar in the Italian fashion. The cappuccino is perfect, the foam thick and silky, the coffee beneath strong and rich. The cornetto is filled with apricot jam that's both sweet and tart. They eat and drink quickly, the way Romans do, then gather their market purchases and make their way toward Villa Borghese. The walk takes them through more of Rome's intricate streets, eventually climbing up toward the Pincian Hill and the entrance to the park. Villa Borghese is Rome's most beloved green space, a vast park of gardens, paths, umbrella pines, and hidden corners. Once the estate of the powerful Borghese family, it's now a public park, a place where Romans come to escape the heat and the crowds, to walk their dogs, to read on benches, to row boats on the little lake. Marco leads Sofia along shaded paths, under canopies of ancient trees. The sound of the city fades, replaced by birdsong and the rustle of leaves. They pass the occasional jogger or family, but mostly they have the paths to themselves. The morning light filters through the leaves in shifting patterns, dappling their faces with light and shadow. They find a quiet spot on a gentle slope, overlooking one of the park's ornamental ponds. Marco spreads out a blanket he's brought, and they arrange their picnic, laying out the bread and cheese, the prosciutto and tomatoes, the figs and peaches. It's simple food, but perfect, the kind of meal that tastes like sunshine and care. They eat slowly, savoring each flavor. Sofia tears off a piece of bread and tops it with mozzarella and tomato, a simple bruschetta that explodes with flavor in her mouth. The tomato is impossibly sweet, the mozzarella creamy and rich, the bread the perfect vehicle for both. Marco watches her face as she eats, pleased by her obvious enjoyment. "This is what food should be," Sofia says. "Simple, fresh, perfect. Why doesn't food taste like this in London?" Marco laughs. "Because you don't have Italian tomatoes or Italian sun. These things matter." After they've eaten, they lie back on the blanket, looking up through the branches at the sky beyond. The day has grown warm, but here in the shade it's pleasant, the breeze carrying the scent of grass and flowers. They talk more, and the conversation grows deeper, more intimate. Sofia tells Marco about her relationships in the past, about boyfriends who were nice enough but never quite right, about beginning to wonder if she was looking for something that didn't exist. She talks about the loneliness of her life sometimes, despite being successful and having friends, a feeling that she was moving through her days without really connecting. Marco shares similar feelings. He talks about the expectations of his large family, everyone wondering when he'll settle down, get married, have children. He talks about feeling like he was waiting for something, or someone, without quite knowing what. About relationships that felt like they were following a script rather than being genuine. "I think I've been afraid," Marco admits, looking up at the play of light through the leaves. "Afraid of giving myself completely to someone, of being vulnerable. It's easier to stay a little bit removed, a little bit protected." "I understand that," Sofia says quietly. "I do the same thing. Keep a part of myself separate, just in case. Just in case it doesn't work out. But here's what I've been thinking since yesterday," Marco says, turning onto his side to look at her. "What if the right person is worth the risk? What if you meet someone and you know, really know, that they're different from everyone else, and you'd regret it forever if you didn't at least try to see where it could go?" Sofia turns to face him, their faces now close on the blanket. Her heart is beating fast. "Is that what you're feeling?" she asks, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Marco says simply. "From the moment I saw you drawing in that piazza. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe this is moving too fast. But I believe in listening to your heart when it's telling you something this clearly. Sofia reaches out and touches his face, her fingers gentle on his cheek. You're not crazy, she says. I feel it too. This recognition. Like I've been looking for you without knowing I was looking. They stay like that for a long moment, looking into each other's eyes, the air between them charged with emotion and possibility. Around them, the park continues its peaceful life, butterflies hovering over flowers, bees humming, the distant laughter of children playing. But Sofia and Marco are in their own world, a bubble of connection that feels both new and ancient, as if they're not just two people meeting but two souls recognizing each other across time. Eventually, they sit up, and Marco reaches into his bag and pulls out his camera. Would you mind if I took some photos? He asks. Not for work. Just for me. To remember this day. Sofia agrees, and Marco photographs her there in the dappled shade, but not in a posed way. He captures her laughing at something he said, her profile as she looks out across the pond, her hands as she tucks a strand of hair behind her ear. These aren't formal portraits but stolen moments, fragments of a perfect afternoon. Then Sofia takes the camera and insists on photographing him too. Marco protests that he's usually behind the camera, not in front of it, but she insists. She photographs him lying back on the blanket, his arm thrown over his eyes against the sun, his smile genuine and unguarded. The photos she takes aren't technically perfect, but they capture something essential about him, a quality of openness and warmth. After the impromptu photo session, they pack up the remains of their picnic and walk more through the park. They visit the small temple of Aesculapius, a folly built on an island in the park's lake, and they rent a rowboat and Marco rows them around the lake while Sofia trails her hand in the cool water. They're silly and playful, and at one point Sofia splashes him lightly and he pretends to tip the boat, making her shriek with laughter. The afternoon grows late, the sun beginning its descent toward evening. They return the boat and walk to a part of the park that offers a spectacular view over the city, the rooftops and domes of Rome spreading out before them in the golden light. Look, Sofia says, pointing to the dome of St. Peter's in the distance, massive and magnificent against the sky. Every time I see that, I'm amazed by the audacity of it. The sheer ambition it took to build something so grand. That's the Roman spirit, Marco says, standing close beside her. Dream big. Build things that will last for centuries. Make monuments to beauty and faith and human achievement. They stand together in silence, watching as the light changes, the sky shifting from blue to gold to pink. Other visitors to the park stop nearby, also drawn by the view, but Sofia and Marco are aware only of each other, of the warmth of standing so close, of the feeling that something profound is happening between them. I don't want today to end, Sofia says softly. Then let's not let it, Marco replies. Come with me. I want to show you Rome at sunset from one more place. Section 5. The Spanish Steps and the Evening Magic. Marco takes Sofia's hand as they leave the park, and this time neither of them comments on it or questions it. It feels natural, right? Their fingers intertwining as they walk. They make their way toward the Spanish Steps, that famous cascade of travertine stairs that sweeps up from Piazza di Spagna to the Trinita dei Monti church at the top. The area is busy with people, as it always is, tourists and locals alike drawn to this gathering place. Street vendors sell roses and toys. Artists sketch quick portraits. A man plays accordion, the notes floating up into the evening air. But Marco leads Sofia not to the steps themselves but to a small gelato shop tucked into a side street. A place with no sign, no tourist fanfare, just a small doorway. "Trust me," he says with a smile. "This is the best gelato in Rome, and I don't say that lightly." Inside, the shop is tiny, with just a few flavors displayed in traditional metal containers. The gelato maker, a man in his 60s with gentle eyes, greets Marco warmly. Marco orders for both of them, getting pistachio for himself and suggesting the hazelnut for Sofia, with a small scoop of dark chocolate added. They step back outside with their gelato, and it's everything Marco promised. The hazelnut is rich and smooth, tasting like actual hazelnuts rather than fake flavoring, and the chocolate is deep and intense, almost bitter, perfectly balanced. Sofia closes her eyes as she tastes it, a small sound of pleasure escaping her. "Good?" Marco asks, grinning. "Incredible," Sofia confirms. "I've had gelato almost every day since I arrived, but this is something else entirely." They walk toward the Spanish Steps, eating their gelato slowly, savoring every spoonful. When they reach the steps, they find a spot about halfway up, settling down on the warm travertine. From here, they can look out over the piazza below, and the streets stretching away toward the center of the city. The light is extraordinary now, the golden hour in full effect, everything bathed in warm, honeyed light. The buildings glow as if lit from within. The sky is a gradient of colors, gold fading to pink fading to the first hints of twilight blue. Swallows swoop and dive overhead, their cries sharp and joyful. Sofia leans back on her hands, tilting her face up to catch the last rays of the sun. Marco watches her, memorizing this moment, the play of light on her face, the contentment in her expression. He feels a fierce surge of emotion, something that might be the beginning of love, and it both thrills and terrifies him. "Tell me something," Sofia says, opening her eyes and looking at him. "Something you've never told anyone else." Marco considers this, wanting to give her something real. "All right," he says slowly. "Sometimes I'm afraid that I'm wasting my life. That I should be doing something more important than taking pictures and writing articles. My father wanted me to be a lawyer like him. Something respectable, lucrative. And here I am, nearly 30, still chasing artistic dreams that may never amount to anything significant." Sofia listens carefully, hearing the vulnerability in his words. "But what if your work matters more than you think?" she says. "You're documenting your city, preserving moments, helping people see beauty. That's not nothing, Marco. That's everything." "You really think so?" he asks, and she can hear how much her answer matters to him. "I really think so," she confirms. "The world needs people who pay attention, who create, who care about beauty and history. Not everything valuable can be measured in traditional success metrics." Marco feels something in his chest unclench, a tension he's been carrying for years. "Thank you," he says quietly. "You don't know how much I needed to hear that. Now you tell me something," he says. "Something true." Sofia takes a breath. "I'm terrified that I'll wake up one day and realize I've built a successful career but have no real life. No love, no deep connections, just professional achievements that will feel hollow in the end. I watched my colleagues, some of them older, brilliant architects, and some of them seem so lonely. And I worry that's my future. It doesn't have to be. Marco says, reaching for her hand again. You're here now. You're letting yourself have this experience, this connection. That takes courage. Does it though? Sofia asks. Or is it just that I'm on holiday, away from my real life, and it's easy to be open here, in this magical city, with someone I'll probably never see again after I leave? She says this last part with real sadness, the thought of leaving suddenly painful. Or, Marco says carefully, maybe Rome brought you here for a reason. Maybe this isn't just a holiday romance. Maybe it's the beginning of something real, something that doesn't have to end when you get on a plane. Sofia looks at him, hope and fear warring in her expression. Is that what you want? Something real? Yes, Marco says without hesitation. I know it's fast. I know it seems crazy. But yes, I want to see where this goes. I want to know you, really know you, not just for a few days but for however long you'll let me. Sofia feels tears prick her eyes, overwhelmed by the emotion of the moment. I want that too, she whispers. I'm scared, but I want it. Marco cups her face gently in his hands, his thumbs brushing away a tear that's escaped down her cheek. We'll figure it out, he says. London and Rome aren't so far apart. We live in a modern age. If we want this, we can make it work. And then, finally, he leans in and kisses her. It's a soft kiss at first, tentative, questioning. But then Sofia responds, and the kiss deepens, becomes something more. It's a kiss full of promise and passion, of hope and hunger, of two people who've been alone finally finding each other. The world around them fades away, the other people on the steps, the noise of the city, all of it receding until there's nothing but this moment, this connection, this perfect kiss as the sun sets over Rome. When they finally pull apart, both slightly breathless, Marco rests his forehead against hers. Sei bellissima, he murmurs. You're beautiful. So are you, Sofia says, and she means it, not just his physical beauty but the beauty of his soul, his kindness, his passion for life and art and his city. They sit there on the Spanish steps as the light fades, wrapped in each other's arms, watching as Rome transforms into its nighttime self. The street lamps flicker on, warm and golden. The buildings are lit from within, windows glowing. The temperature drops slightly, becoming comfortable, perfect. Are you hungry? Marco asks eventually. We could get dinner or? Sofia prompts. Or we could just walk, Marco suggests. Along the Tiber. It's beautiful at night. Let's walk, Sofia decides. They descend the Spanish steps hand in hand and make their way toward the river. The Tiber flows through the heart of Rome, wide and green-gray, spanned by ancient and modern bridges. At night, the walkways along its banks become a gathering place, locals and tourists alike strolling, sitting on the low walls, enjoying the evening. Marco and Sofia walk slowly along the river, in no hurry to be anywhere. They stop at a small cart selling supply and fried zucchini flowers, and they buy some to share, eating as they walk, licking the salt and oil from their fingers. They watch street performers, a man juggling fire, a woman singing opera with a voice that soars into the night. They pause on one of the bridges, leaning on the railing, watching the lights of the city reflected in the moving water. I love how alive this city feels at night, Sofia says. It's not just nightlife in the party sense. It's people living, being together, enjoying the evening. Romans live outdoors as much as possible. Marco explains. Especially in summer. The piazzas and streets are like our living rooms. Why sit alone in an apartment when you can be out here, part of the life of the city? They continue walking, eventually finding themselves in front of the Castel Sant'Angelo, the massive circular fortress that started as a mausoleum, became a papal residence, and is now a museum. At night, lit dramatically, it looks like something from a fantasy, ancient and imposing against the dark sky. There's an opera set here, did you know? Marco says. Tosca. It ends with the heroine throwing herself off the ramparts. Cheerful, Sofia says with a smile. Well, it's opera, Marco replies with a grin. Someone has to die dramatically. But it's beautiful too. All that passion and tragedy. Sometimes I think Italians understand that life is meant to be felt intensely, everything from joy to sorrow. Is that how you live? Sofia asks. Intensely? Marco considers this. I try to. I want to feel things, experience things, not just go through the motions. Maybe that's why I've been so affected by meeting you. Because it feels intense in the best way. Like I'm finally fully awake. Sofia understands exactly what he means. She's felt more alive in the past 2 days than she has in months, maybe years. Her normal life, which seemed perfectly fine, now seems pale and muted in comparison to these vivid days in Rome with Marco. They walk and talk until late, until the streets grow quieter, and even the most ardent evening strollers have headed home. When Marco finally walks Sofia back to her apartment, both of them are reluctant to say goodnight. They stand outside her door, holding hands, either wanting to break the connection. Tomorrow? Marco asks. I want to show you the Colosseum. I know that sounds cliché, but at early morning, before the crowds, it's still magical. I love that, Sofia says. What time? Early. 7? I know that's difficult on holiday, but the light will be perfect. I'll be ready, Sofia promises. Marco kisses her again, and it's just as powerful as the first time, just as full of promise. When they finally part, Sofia climbs the stairs to her apartment feeling like she's floating, and Marco walks home through the quiet streets feeling more hopeful about the future than he has in years. Section 6. The Colosseum and Deeper Connection. Sofia's alarm sounds at 6 in the morning, and instead of groaning and hitting snooze as she might normally do, she springs out of bed, energized by anticipation. She showers quickly, dresses in comfortable clothes for walking, and grabs a sweater because the morning will still be cool. She's ready and waiting on the street when Marco arrives, exactly on time, with 2 paper cups of cappuccino and a bag of cornetti from a nearby bar. Buongiorno, he greets her, handing her the coffee and kissing her cheek. Ready to see the most famous building in Rome? Lead the way, Sofia says, taking a sip of the cappuccino. It's perfect, giving her the caffeine boost she needs, warming her from the inside. They walk through the still quiet streets toward the Colosseum. At this early hour, Rome belongs to the locals, to the workers opening shops, to old men reading newspapers at bars, to delivery trucks making their rounds. The tourists are mostly still asleep in their hotels, and it feels like Sofia and Marco have the city to themselves. When they turn the corner and the Colosseum comes into view, massive and ancient against the pale morning sky, Sofia stops in her tracks. No matter how many pictures you've seen, nothing quite prepares you for the reality of it, the sheer scale and presence of this 2,000-year-old amphitheater. It's overwhelming, she breathes. Almost 2,000 years old, Marco says softly, looking at the familiar structure with fresh appreciation. And it's still standing. Still magnificent. Think of everything this building has witnessed, all of human history that's passed while these stones endured. They approach the Colosseum, and Marco leads her not to the entrance but around the exterior, where they can appreciate the structure itself. The morning light is soft and golden, illuminating the travertine stone, highlighting every arch and column and weathered surface. There are a few other people here, but it's nothing like the crowds that will arrive later. Marco tells her about the building as they walk, how it could hold 50,000 spectators, how it had a sophisticated system of underground passages and lifts to bring gladiators and animals up into the arena, how it had a retractable awning to protect spectators from the sun, how it represented the engineering genius of ancient Rome. But he also talks about what it meant, the complex relationship Romans had with violence and spectacle, how the games were about power and control as much as entertainment, how this building represents both the glory of Roman civilization and some of its darkest aspects. It's complicated, he says, running his hand along the worn stone. You can't just admire it without acknowledging what happened here. But that's Rome, isn't it? Beautiful and brutal, glorious and terrible, everything layered together. They circle the entire structure, and then Marco uses his connections to get them in before the official opening time, through a friend who works as a guard. Inside, standing in the arena itself, looking up at the ruined tiers of seating rising all around, Sofia feels the weight of history in a way that makes her shiver. Imagine it full, Marco says quietly. 50,000 people cheering, the sound echoing off these walls. Imagine being a gladiator down here, looking up at all those faces, knowing you might die in the next few minutes. The fear and the courage that must have taken. They explore the various levels, and Marco shows her details most tourists miss: carved graffiti left by medieval visitors, specific architectural innovations, viewing angles that make the structure particularly striking. His knowledge and passion make the building come alive for Sofia, transforming it from a tourist site into a real place where real people lived and died and cheered and wept. They sit finally in one of the higher tiers, looking down at the arena floor far below, and the conversation shifts, becomes more personal again. Tell me about your mother, Marco says gently. You mentioned losing her young. If it's not too painful to talk about. Sofia is quiet for a moment, then begins to speak. I was 12 when she died. Cancer. She was a painter, quite talented actually, though she never pursued it professionally. She painted for love of it, and our house was always full of her canvases, these beautiful, vibrant landscapes and abstracts. She taught me to see the world as something to be appreciated, to notice beauty in ordinary things. She sounds wonderful, Marco says. She was. Sofia agrees, her voice thick with emotion even after all these years. Losing her was like losing color from the world for a while. Everything felt gray and flat. But my father, he was incredible. He kept us going, my brother and me. He made sure we still did all the things Mum would have wanted us to do, still pursued our dreams, still found joy. He taught me that love doesn't end with death, that we carry the people we've lost with us, that they shape us even when they're gone. Is he still alive? Marco asks. Yes, still in England. He's retired now, does a lot of gardening, reads constantly. I call him every week. He'll want to hear all about this trip, about Rome. She pauses, then adds with a small smile. About you, probably. What will you tell him about me? Marco asks, curious and a bit nervous. Sofia looks at him, at his open, honest face, at the genuine interest and affection in his eyes. That I met someone unexpected. Someone who makes me feel things I wasn't sure I'd ever feel. Someone who might just be extraordinary. Marco takes her hand, threading his fingers through hers. My parents are going to want to meet you, he says. They'll probably want to feed you approximately 7 courses and ask you 1,000 questions. My mother especially. She's been waiting for me to bring someone home for years. Is that an invitation? Sofia asks, her heart beating faster. Would you like it to be? Marco counters. We could have dinner with them before you leave. If you're comfortable with that. I know it's fast, but I'd like them to meet you. I'd like you to see that part of my life. Sofia feels a surge of affection for him, for his willingness to integrate her into his life despite the uncertainty, despite not knowing where this is going. I'd love to meet them, she says. I'm a little nervous, but I'd love it. They sit together in the ancient amphitheater as the morning progresses, watching as the first tour groups begin to arrive, as the site transitions from peaceful to bustling. They talk about their families more, about their childhoods, about formative experiences that shaped who they became. They share stories that are sometimes funny, sometimes poignant, building a deeper understanding of each other with every revelation. I think, Marco says at one point, that we're given these connections so rarely. Most people we meet, we like them or we don't, we have pleasant interactions or unpleasant ones, but it's surface. Real connection, the kind where you feel seen and understood, that's rare. And maybe we're not supposed to question it when it happens. Maybe we're just supposed to be grateful. That's a very romantic way to see things, Sofia observes, but she's smiling. I'm Italian, Marco says with a grin. Romance is in my blood. But I'm also serious. I don't want to waste this, whatever this is between us. I don't want to let fear or logistics or any other practical concern stop us from seeing where it could go. Neither do I, Sofia says firmly. I've spent too much of my life being careful, being sensible. Maybe it's time to take a risk. They leave the Colosseum mid-morning, emerging into the full sunshine and the crowds of tourists that have now arrived. The contrast is stark, from the quiet communion they shared inside to the busy reality of modern Rome outside. But they're in their own bubble still, aware of each other more than anything else. They spend the rest of the day exploring more of ancient Rome, the Forum with its scattered ruins and standing columns, the Palatine Hill where emperors once lived, gardens and temples and fragments of a civilization that dominated the known world. Marco is an excellent guide, bringing history to life, but more than that, he's a wonderful companion, making Sofia laugh with his observations, listening intently when she shares her thoughts, comfortable with both conversation and silence. They have lunch at a place near the Circus Maximus, sitting outside under an umbrella, eating cacio e pepe again because Sofia says she could eat it every day and never tire of it. They share a carafe of white wine, cold and crisp, perfect for the warm afternoon. They're both a bit sunburned, tired from all the walking, but happy, deeply content in each other's company. I have 3 more days in Rome, Sofia says, and the words hang between them, a reminder that this interlude, perfect as it is, has an end date. Then we'll make them count, Marco says firmly. And then we'll figure out what comes next. Together. Section 7. The Final Day Declarations of Love. Sofia's last full day in Rome dawns clear and beautiful. She wakes with a weight in her chest, the knowledge that tomorrow she'll board a plane back to London, back to her regular life, and this magical interlude will be over. But Marco has made plans for their final day, and she's determined to be present for every moment, to not let the shadow of leaving ruin what time they have left. They've agreed to start early again, and Marco picks her up just as the sun is rising. "Trust me," he says mysteriously when she asks where they're going. "It's somewhere special." He takes her to St. Peter's Basilica, arriving so early that the square is nearly empty. The massive church rises before them, Michelangelo's dome dominating the skyline, one of the most iconic silhouettes in the world. But they don't go inside the basilica itself. Instead, Marco leads her around to a side entrance, where he somehow gets them access to the dome climb. They climb the seemingly endless spiral staircase, round and round, occasionally stopping to catch their breath and look out the small windows at the expanding view of Rome below. The climb is tiring, but worth every step, because when they finally emerge at the very top of the dome, the view is breathtaking. All of Rome spreads out before them in every direction. The Tiber snaking through the city, the tiled roofs glowing in the early light, the domes and monuments they've visited over the past days visible from this elevated vantage point. The air is fresh and cool at this height, and the city is just beginning to wake up, still peaceful, still soft in the morning light. "This is incredible," Sofia says, turning slowly to take in the full panorama. "Thank you for bringing me here. I wanted you to see Rome from above," Marco says. "To understand how it all fits together, how the ancient and the modern exist side by side, how the city has grown but still keeps its shape, its character." They stand together at the railing, looking out over the city, and Marco puts his arm around Sofia's shoulders, drawing her close. They're quiet for a long moment, both feeling the weight of unspoken things, both knowing that they need to address the future they've been dancing around. "I don't want you to leave," Marco says finally, his voice low and serious. "I know you have to. I know you have a life in London, a job, a home. But I don't want you to leave." "I don't want to go," Sofia admits. "These past few days with you, I've been happier than I've been in years. Maybe ever. You've made me feel alive, Marco. You've made me feel seen and understood and cherished. The thought of leaving, of not seeing you every day, it's breaking my heart." Marco turns her to face him, his hands on her shoulders, his eyes intense and serious. "Then let's not let this end. We'll visit each other, as often as we can. London to Rome is just a few hours by plane. We'll video call, we'll text, we'll find ways to stay connected. And maybe, eventually, we'll figure out how to be in the same place permanently. I don't know how yet, but I know I want to try." "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" Sofia asks, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm saying I'm falling in love with you," Marco says, the words coming out in a rush. "I know it's fast, I know we've only known each other a few days, but I don't care. I've never felt this way before, so certain, so completely sure that someone is right for me. I'm falling in love with you, Sofia, and I want to see where this goes, wherever that is." Tears fill Sofia's eyes, but they're happy tears, tears of relief and joy. "I'm falling in love with you too," she says, her voice breaking. "I've been trying not to admit it to myself because I was scared, but it's true. I love you, Marco. I love your passion and your kindness, and the way you see beauty in everything. I love how you've shared your city with me, how you've made me feel welcomed and valued and understood." Marco kisses her then, high above Rome, with the city spread out below them like a blessing. It's a kiss full of love and promise, of hope for a future either of them can quite see yet, but both are willing to reach for. When they finally pull apart, both are crying a little, overwhelmed by the emotion of the moment. "We'll make this work," Marco says fiercely. "I don't know how, but we will. Because what we have is too rare, too precious to let go of." "Yes," Sofia agrees. "We'll make it work." They stay at the top of the dome for a long time, planning and dreaming. Marco will come to London in 3 weeks, spend a long weekend with her there. Sofia will come back to Rome in 6 weeks, take some vacation time, stay longer. They'll alternate visits, they'll be patient with the difficulties of distance, they'll communicate honestly and openly about their needs and fears. They'll introduce each other to their friends, integrate each other into their lives. And someday, maybe, one of them will move, or they'll find a third place that works for both of them. But that's far in the future, something to figure out when the time is right. For now, they have today, and they're determined to make it perfect. They descend from the dome and spend the rest of the morning exploring the Vatican museums, the Sistine Chapel with Michelangelo's famous ceiling, the endless galleries of art and antiquities. But as beautiful as it all is, either of them is really focused on the art. They're focused on each other, on memorizing the way they fit together, the sound of each other's laughter, the feeling of hands clasped together. For lunch, Marco takes Sofia to his family's home in a residential neighborhood away from the tourist center. His parents' apartment is on the 4th floor of a building that's seen better days. But inside it's warm and welcoming, full of family photos and comfortable furniture, and the incredible smell of cooking food. Marco's mother, Giulia, is a plump woman with graying hair and a smile that transforms her face. His father, Antonio, is tall and still handsome in his 60s, with the same dark curls Marco has, though streaked with silver. They welcome Sofia with open arms, literally, hugging her as if she's already family, exclaiming over her in rapid Italian that Marco translates with a somewhat embarrassed grin. The meal is extraordinary, course after course of traditional Roman cooking. They start with fritti, fried artichokes and zucchini flowers. Then pasta alla griscia, the predecessor to carbonara, rich with guanciale and pecorino. Then saltimbocca, veal with prosciutto and sage, tender and flavorful. And finally, a light panna cotta for dessert, wobbly and sweet. Throughout the meal, Marco's parents asked Sofia questions, translated by Marco, about her family, her work, her impressions of Rome. They're warm and interested, and Sofia feels genuinely welcomed. Giulia keeps heaping more food on Sofia's plate, the universal gesture of motherly love expressed through feeding. Antonio pours wine generously, toasting to love and to Rome and to bringing people together. Midway through the meal, Giulia says something to Marco in Italian, looking at Sofia with warm, approving eyes. Marco laughs and translates. "She says she approves of you. That I should do whatever it takes to keep you. That good women don't come along every day. Tell her I think the same about her son," Sofia says, and when Marco translates, Giulia beams and comes around the table to kiss Sofia on both cheeks. After the meal, they sit in the living room drinking espresso, and Antonio brings out old photo albums, showing Sofia pictures of Marco as a child, gangly and gap-toothed, making her laugh with embarrassing stories that Marco protests about but secretly seems pleased by. It's intimate and familial, and Sofia feels a pang of longing for this kind of warmth, this kind of close family connection. When they finally leave, Julia hugs Sofia tightly and makes her promise to come back soon. "You're always welcome here," she says in careful English. "Your family now." The afternoon is waning as Marco and Sofia walk slowly back toward the center of Rome. Neither wants the day to end, but the clock is ticking down to Sofia's departure. "Your family is wonderful," Sofia says. "I can see where you get your warmth and passion." "They loved you," Marco assures her. "My mother already told me she thinks you're perfect for me. She has good instincts about these things." They end up at the Pantheon, that architectural marvel that's been standing for 2,000 years, its massive dome with the oculus at the center, open to the sky. Inside, the light from the oculus moves across the floor as the day progresses, marking time in the most literal way. They sit on one of the marble benches, looking up at the coffered ceiling, at the circle of sky visible through the opening. "The Pantheon has always been my favorite building in Rome," Marco says quietly. "It survived earthquakes, floods, wars, the fall of the empire, everything. And it's still here, still magnificent, still inspiring awe. It gives me hope, somehow. That beautiful things can endure, that what we build and create can last." "That's what we're building, isn't it?" Sofia says. "Something we hope will endure. Our own kind of monument." "Yes," Marco agrees. "Exactly that." They sit in peaceful silence as the light changes, as the oculus marks the passage of time. Around them, tourists come and go, taking photos, exclaiming over the architecture, but Sofia and Marco are in their own world, savoring these final hours together. As evening falls, they have a final dinner at a quiet restaurant Marco knows, a place with tables in a small garden, with strings of lights overhead and the sound of a fountain in the background. They order without really thinking about it, letting Marco's instinct guide them, and the food is delicious but neither of them is really tasting it. They're too aware that this is their last evening, that tomorrow morning Sofia will pack her bags and head to the airport. "I'm terrified," Sofia admits over dessert, a shared tiramisu that neither of them is eating. "That when I get back to London, this will start to feel like a dream. That the distance will make it harder than we think. That we won't be able to make it work." "I'm terrified too," Marco admits. "But I think fear is just proof that this matters, that we're risking something real. And I'd rather risk it and possibly fail than never try at all and spend the rest of my life wondering what could have been." "You're right," Sofia says, reaching across the table to take his hand. "We owe it to ourselves to try. To really try, with everything we have." "Promise me something," Marco says. "Promise me that you'll be honest with me. That if the distance is too hard, if you're not happy, if you need something I'm not giving you, you'll tell me. We can only make this work if we communicate." "I promise," Sofia says. "And you promise me the same. We'll be honest with each other, always." They leave the restaurant and walk one final time through Rome's streets, through the neighborhoods and piazzas that have become so familiar over the past few days. They end up at the Trevi Fountain again, where they first spent time together on that first magical day. It's late now, and the crowd has thinned, just a few couples and late-night wanderers remaining. "Make a wish," Marco says, handing Sofia a coin. "Throw it in, ensure you'll come back to Rome." "I don't need a coin for that," Sofia says, but she takes it anyway. She turns her back to the fountain, as tradition demands, and tosses the coin over her shoulder. She doesn't say her wish out loud, but Marco can guess what it is. It's probably the same as his, that this love will last, that they'll find a way to be together, that this isn't the end but the beginning. Marco throws his own coin, making his own silent wish. Then he turns to Sofia and takes her in his arms, holding her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, memorizing the feeling of her body against his. "I love you," he says into her hair. "I'm going to miss you so much." "I love you too," Sofia says, her voice muffled against his chest. "But it's just 6 weeks until I come back." "We can do 6 weeks. We can do anything," Marco agrees. "As long as we're together, even if it's just in spirit for now." They stand there for a long time, holding each other by the fountain, the water rushing and splashing behind them, Rome embracing them with its ancient magic. And in that moment, despite the sadness of impending separation, they both feel a deep sense of certainty. This love is real. It's worth fighting for. And whatever challenges lie ahead, they'll face them together.